I now call this meeting to order. First item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any guests in the room or on Zoom who would like to provide public comment? No one on Zoom? No guests for public comment? Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, which is roll call. I will now call roll. Bruce Dickinson,
Here.
Chris. I don't wanna, Ilsa,
That's wonderful. Here. Thank you.
Dave Bachman,
Here.
Debbie Walton,
Here.
thank you, Debbie. Deanna Castrone,
Dina Feldes Castrejon here.
Dina Valdez, thank you. Gina Griggs. Briggs. Oh. Haley Purdy. John Epstein. Rochelle Lucas. Lynn Kimley.
Here.
Thank you. Myself, Nathan Teskey. Nina Stafford. Paul Cummings.
Here.
Thank you, Paul. Ryan Kane.
Here.
Thank you, Ryan. We now have quorum. We've met quorum. Thank you. Do we have any members who have updates that would like to share? Anything? Anyone?
There was a fun presentation last week on social housing. That's really getting some traction in Portland, at least. I don't know how that's making its way out here or not, but how about that?
Can you share a little bit about it?
Sure. So it's an idea of, well, to start, it was in Geneva, the first place that instituted this, and it's kind of local level public housing is the way that I think about it. Is the local community supports the effort of buying and developing properties for the people that live in the community and keeping those costs low. So you're not reliant on federal funds. Chicago, Seattle, and not Baltimore, outside of DC, they're trying to start these policies to help with the housing crisis, and Portland's starting to look into it as well.
It's awesome. We don't have anything else. We can move on to the executive director's report from Molly Rogers to share this month's executive director's report.
Thank you, Chair Bell. Good morning, everyone. Good stuff. Just wanted to first thank our 5 new members joining us and part of our reset of our terms. I understand you guys went through orientation a few weeks ago. I'm not sure if anyone mentioned you guys signed up for 4 years. I'm not sure. 4 years, obviously, but hopefully the time will go fast. It's an auspicious and incredible moment for us to be in housing. Nationally, we're facing headwinds like we've never seen before. And of course, we are still on the cusp of moving forward on unprecedented resources that our community gets to benefit from between 2 voter-approved measures, bonds and supportive housing services. So Washington County has changed and transformed quite a bit, and we are truly moving the needle in our community. So I wanted to just frame that up, that you're coming at a great time. I just want a quick introductions of our new 5 members. Quick little tidbits, and if you all wouldn't mind maybe sharing, a fun fact about yourself. you're more than welcome to if you would like to. I would love to start with Chris Iosa. Chris Iosa, I first met Chris working when you worked at Duke at Multnomah, and you are really truly effectively, functionally ending veterans homelessness in Portland. So welcome aboard, Chris.
Thank you. So Chris Ayosa, I use he, him pronouns. I am the veteran rep. I am the original founder and executive director of Do Good Multnomah, which is a nonprofit that serves houseless veterans through emergency shelter, transitional housing, and development with supportive housing. I left that role in 2022. I have been privileged to co-found now 5 other nonprofits that do similar work. Currently find myself as the deputy director of a smaller nonprofit in Oregon City called The Father's Heart, as I also attempt to finish my doctorate. So one fun fact about me. I do. Yeah. So I have a 14-year-old son, so challenging. One fun fact about me is fundraising is not a skill set. So the first attempt I had at capital campaign, I rode my bike cross country and raised just a little over $30,000 in doing it. So
Wow.
yeah.
Did it cover your costs?
Yeah.
And of course, the
Welcome.
pleasure of welcome, yes. And I've known Paul for about, 20 years now,
Yeah.
2 different decades. And Paul comes with us from more of a national perspective as a longtime syndicator. Of course, you're filling our urban and regional slots, so we can make sure we all could find a slot for all of you, going back to your Berkeley days. Paul, do you want to share?
Sure. Thank you. Happy to be here. So Paul Cummings, I'm with National Affordable Housing Trust. It's a nonprofit syndicator, works on the affordable housing side to provide equity. So we manage equity funds that invest in affordable housing for tax credits. Been in Washington County. We've had for some time, we have 3 children that were born here, and we've moved a couple times where they've lived within a half mile of kind of where they first lived for I think our oldest about to be 23. So I worked nationally for kind of my entire career outside of some time in Vermont, but I focus very much locally and appreciate the opportunity to help out here. Fun fact about myself, besides running, I know Molly through housing and running, we've run Hood to Coast, but I have a twin brother, fraternal twin brother, and we're both adopted. So I have a little bit of appreciation for sort of the challenges that folks have. One, when you're adopted, and I'm unique in the sense that I don't know many people adopted that had their genetic sibling with them, and also a twin. So it's we don't look the same anymore. We looked similar when we were younger, but plus my mom would dress the same clothes. But it's been a fun way to be connected. So thanks again for the invitation.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Glenn Kinley, welcome. You're a loan officer at Maps Credit Union, and you're filling our financing.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you. I'm excited to be here. So I'm a commercial loan officer with MAPS. I've been in this sort of role for about 5 years or so. So we do a lot of, I work with a lot of small businesses throughout the state as well as Southwest Washington. So I get to know just the various businesses around the community, which I find very fulfilling, helping the communities and the businesses grow. So this is kind of a natural step for me in doing some more of that good work that I like to do. I'm pretty boring, so there's not a lot of fun facts. So I do like to garden. We just moved to Beaverton. We were in Hillsborough for about 5 years. So our house out there, it's in the South Cooper Mountain, which used to be vineyards. And the soil there is terrible, so. And so it's gonna take a few years, but I do like to garden, and that's a challenge that I'm having right now, really developing it and making the house ours and making the garden actually useful. Not getting too much this year. That's what I'm glad to be here.
And Chriselle with us?
Chriselle is running late. She had child drop-off duties, but I'll maybe just give a brief intro, and if she comes in, she can share a fun fact. Chriselle, on the homeless services side, works for one of our partners, the Forest Grove Foundation, supporting supportive services and behavioral health program director, so working with folks experiencing homelessness, particularly unsheltered homelessness, those that are most vulnerable, and helping to connect them to resources. So she's an important partner for us in this work. She also has lived experience that she brings to it of both housing instability and living through the foster care system. So we're really grateful to have that connection to the homeless services side coming into our work here at the Housing Advisory Committee.
Ronnie, it's a full slate. And then Deborah Walton is a third generation Oregonian and lives in Hillsborough and works for the Beaverton School District in special education.
I actually, I have a couple of other jobs. I also am a home care worker for the state, for Washington County. And I also work for a private company where I provide support services for DD adults. And yes, I have been in Oregon. Well, my family's been in Oregon since about the 1840s, not very long. Mainly Washington County. So I've seen a lot of change. In my younger years, when I was raising my kids, we were actually in a housing authority home that we rented. It provided an opportunity for me, especially after I divorced about over 20 years ago. And it did provide me an opportunity to go back to college and get a career where I could support my children. At the time, I was a single mom. I am very much involved in the community as far as providing, not just providing services, but advocating. A fun fact, a couple of fun facts. I think it was in '89, I ran the West Side Gleaners, and I also was very involved in the food bank. And I was asked if I would testify before a Senate subcommittee for Washington County because we had high income per capita, but at the same time, we had some of the highest poverty rates. And one of the things I really focused on was housing. Housing cost of living had gone up, but our incomes hadn't matched that. Now what I'm doing is one of my clients who is a DD adult, we are actually advocating for the passage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with House Bill 444. It is a House bill that we're trying to get passed to actually increase the amount of accessibility for adults that have disabilities, whether it's developmental or physical. So I am very excited to be a part of this group, and I hope to be able to, add whatever I can. And thank you again.
Thank you, welcome.
Wow, well, I just want to emphasize what an incredible opportunity we all have for all of you to, I want you to all extend your perspective, expertise, diversity of opinion. You are here to make us better. We have high expectations for serving our community, and I want you to make sure we serve it even better, high quality work that we do here. And also let us know if there are things that we should be considering that we may be not considering. And make sure that we are serving our mission first and foremost. Matching as much as we can best practices, new innovations, mitigating risks wherever we can, and help us grow in a way that best serves Washington. What is unique about, I believe is really unique about the work we do here is that we get to be a part of a larger county effort in what we call One Washington County, as well as a housing authority, where we're bringing in the federal resources through that arm, as well as we get to extend our housing authority to be a general partner in what we call housing tax credit partnerships. So we have grown exponentially in all arenas of those branches over the last 5+ years, and we have a huge pipeline that we will share with you. We've got budget, but I just wanted to emphasize we've got other stakeholders, and we have a Homeless Solutions Council. Our work here is going to be a little bit more focused on our housing authority activities. So that's going to be both encompassing of our rental assistance, voucher programs, our public housing and our properties and our real estate. A couple updates for you all. We had a great, incredible energy at our board. I thought we've got, need someone joining us. Michelle. Yes. Oh, no, Michelle, we just did an intro of you before we got here. But before we really, I'm Molly Rogers. I'm the director here. Michelle, is there anything you want to share about yourself or any sort of fun fact?
Let's see, well, I've been doing this kind of work in Washington County, helping work for the last 6 years, and really enjoyed it. And I used to work with youth, and now I work with adults. And I really enjoy learning all the new things, about the helping world, so.
Great.
Welcome. Thank you.
So we have energy at our last board meeting, what we call our Housing Authority Board of Directors, otherwise known as HABOD, short form. HABOD got to have a presentation about our preservation, what we call our affordable housing preservation effort, which is we completely refinanced and re-syndicated, well, first time syndication, completely renovated 10 communities within 2 different limited partnerships. So 5 in under one, 5 under a second limited partnership, and that we went through a massive renovation effort 1 year at a time, 1 year sequence. So we had 10 projects under construction with relocation of existing residents, bringing them all back in roughly around the same time. So we worked with Bronner and Company as our development consultants there. And it was really a way for us to acknowledge the great work Bronner's done for the Housing Authority. And I just wanted to bring that to this, this circle as well. That it takes a unique level of competency and patience to do occupied rehabs. I'll just put it that way. So be able to reset the financing and some of the Section 8 vouchers and some of the properties, as well as for the most part, bringing back all the folks who needed to come. So that was that. We've got some time here to talk about that update, but that was a really big deal, and our board really was really appreciative. At some point, it might be fun to do kind of some kind of tour of the 10 properties.
There is going to be a celebration, I think, planned in September, and we will, of course, invite you all as well as our board of directors. The good news about these 2 projects, the first one is 330 units, the second one is 260 units. These are very complicated redevelopments. And for those of you who might not know me, I'm Jill Chen, I'm the assistant director. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to just jump in. But we did want to, let you guys know, it's going to be, the date is not yet planned, but we will advise you because I think it'll be a wonderful celebration. We are actually targeting for conversion to end of May for the 330 units. For those of you who are in the lingo of conversion to perm, this is huge. It means we're going to save money in terms of construction interest to permanent interest. And then for the second project, phase 2, we will finish construction by the end of the summer. So by around September, everything will be completed. And we're hoping to convert to perm by the end of this calendar year. So a lot of time, and you'll see that in our real estate.
Our board also approved what we call our 5-year public housing plan. So that's a big deal for us. It's 5 years. You guys got to miss all of that vetting. But it really did. A couple of things that I just wanted to highlight that we did is we extended what we call our goal-based incentives for self-sufficiency. So often if you reach a certain point where what's called a zero cap, where you no longer need a housing assistance payment, you were essentially terminated from the program after 6 months. We've now extended that to 12 months because life can happen to you still for those 6 months. And we didn't want people to have additional fears to reach that point. And so that was, so those are sort of some highlights of the things that we're doing. We worked really closely with our residents Services Board, getting input from them. I also just, for those of you who may not be aware, obviously HUD is under attack from the Trump administration. We are just hearing that most of the Portland field offices. Now we're hearing a handful of folks are leaving to keep the lights on. We also are hearing early termination of our emergency voucher program, which we used here from our coordinated entry list. That we really did rise to the challenge to moving a needle for the folks who are housing unstable or experiencing homelessness, move people into housing. That we are then now having to figure out what happens when what remaining households at the end of 2026, they're still in that program right now. It's how many total households?
It's 80. It's between 77 and 80 right now. Like we have one or two that we're just finding out, like, are they?
Households.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is something we are grappling with. And then I also wanted to highlight for the second time in, I believe, our housing authority history, we will likely be experiencing shortfall in the housing choice voucher program. So that is a time when our amount we have in reserves are not enough to pay for 3 months worth of rental assistance paid out. So that is a combination of market factors where your rents are where people are need to have enough of a housing assistance payment to keep your utilization rate, people wanting to use Section 8 vouchers in their community. But we get a certain amount coming from HUD and the federal appropriations level, what we call proration, and we're going to talk a little bit about that around when we get to talk about budget. But we are scenario planning to worst best case scenarios around proration rates. Even at what we call our sort of flat levels, we will likely be insured. So we're having conversations with HUD to better understand if there are the possibility of shortfall funds, which is what typically happens when we get to this place. But we are not alone. This is a national trend. That's what happened last year. We were on a shortfall for a short amount of, it's a short shortfall. And this year there's just a lot of unknowns. But I just wanted to end on a really incredible positive note, which is we got to open one more housing, metro housing bond project called Lineback Gardens, right in Cooper Mountain, near Cooper Mountain. It was in Fawcett Creek area, so a new burgeoning community. It's like you can see all the green land that's about to be developed with all the new info coming in, but it's a gorgeous 116 units that's being developed. That was developed by SEPA. That's our community partnership for affordable housing, and it used 14.7 million of Washington County's allocation of the board approved metro housing fund. So it was named after the late Doug Lineback, who's a longtime member of their board and a longtime champion of affordable housing. He was there shaking all the city councilors and electeds saying, what can you do for affordable housing? And after that, I'll turn it back over to Chair Bell.
Thank you, Molly, for sharing. Thank you. Let's see. We will now move on. There are no resolution or action items, so we will move on to the next agenda item. That liaison update, I will now pass it over to Nicole.
Thank you, Chair, and hi, folks. Many of you are not used to seeing my face. My name is Nicole Stang. BNF Valdez is on much deserved vacation, so I am filling in for her in today's meeting. I would work on our homeless services side, supporting strategic initiatives and relations, including all of our advisory body work here, so I'm glad to be with you. I have a few quick updates. First, I hope some of you are able to join us tonight at the volunteer appreciation event hosted by the county. It's again tonight at 5:30 at the Wingspan Center. I don't know if maybe show of hands, is anyone able to join? Is anyone planning on making it?
It's today, tomorrow.
It's tonight.
No, it says the 25th, Thursday the 25th.
Today's Thursday.
Today's Thursday.
Yeah.
The 25th is confusing. It is.
Yes.
It
So
is the
it is
24th.
fourth.
Yes,
Yes.
the 24th. So We're looking forward to that. We also, just for folks that have been around, know that we host a December luncheon to celebrate specifically housing services volunteers. So you'll get the chance to be celebrated there alongside our Homeless Solutions Advisory Council that Executive Director Rogers mentioned at her update. So we're excited to celebrate you if you can join. If not, we'll see you in December to celebrate you then. I also want to remind folks that we've done a series of public meeting rules and training. So if you joined the one earlier this month on public meetings hosted by our council, you don't need to join this, but do want to let everyone know we're hosting another public meetings records and ethics overview on April 30th from 12 to 1. Sorry, it's over the lunch hour, but maybe that makes it easier to join. We do encourage you to go to one a year just as a refresher course. These are complex laws and we don't expect you to memorize them. So we're happy to provide this as an update and refresher. In addition, I want to share that we'll be moving our written department updates to quarterly instead of monthly. This will align with our quarterly reporting to our funders and give you more of a comprehensive update of what's happening quarter by quarter. And I also want to remind our new members, and Debbie will connect with you later to grab a parking pass before you go. This ensures you don't get a ticket for parking beyond the 2-hour limit. So we do want to make sure you get those. And that's really all I have for now. Happy to be here, answer questions. BNF will be back in her normal order in May, and you'll get updates from her then.
Thank you for sharing, Nicole. Thank you. I will now provide a chair report out to discuss some of the work we as co-chairs have been supporting. We have completed the review of section 1 and 2 of our bylaws, which consist of the name and purpose. No recommended changes were considered. In our last review, we began reviewing section 3, which consists of membership information. We are slowly making our way through this section, which we hope to have some proposed changes. We will provide those updates when we have them. As a reminder, you are always welcome to reach out to BNF if you want to be involved in a certain section of the bylaws review process.
Going a little bit there.
Yes, absolutely.
One, big props to BNF for her work on a very boring task. And the rewording of the membership is based on, if you look around the table, there's a lot of very specific roles that we have to fill. We want that spirit, we want our voices from different parts of the community, but not so handcuffed that we're not allowed to bring in the people that we want on this committee. That's kind of what we're diving into there right now. And so if anyone's interested in helping out and giving their opinion on that.
Okay. Lastly, with a quick turnaround, staff worked with the advisory body chairs to submit testimony letter on behalf of HAC to support the bond bill 5505 that focuses on budget allocation for housing and community services investments. HAC's guidance on previous letters we submitted and housing priorities was helpful in drafting this letter. You will find that letter submitted in your packet. Thank you for HAC members and staff for their support and guidance throughout this legislative session. Nicole, is there any more information you want to share?
Yeah, I'll share maybe a little more context for our new members. This body provided your chair and vice chair the authority to write letters on your behalf, and we have used it a couple times. And really grateful to have that support to engage in the state legislative process. The first time was in support of the Affordable Housing Preservation Package. You may recall that included vouchers, additional timeline for tenants if there are affordability restrictions in the property they were living in were expiring. We're also seeking state lottery bond dollars for actual preservation and resources for affordable housing. That bill hasn't been up for a hearing yet. Chair, be warned, we'll be calling on you again when it is. But to date, along with the preservation package, both the HAC Solutions Council and Chair Harrington supported letters of support for Oregon Housing and Community Services budget, which funds much of our work in terms of developing new housing and supporting our homeless services system. And in addition to this bill that we provided testimony on, we're hearing strong support from advocates in terms of what they're hearing from legislators as it relates to housing investments, and strong support to continue the high level of bond investments that the state has provided in the Local Innovation Fast Track program known as LIFT and in permanent supportive housing. So we're eager to see that move forward. I'll be in Salem next week talking to legislators and getting a better sense of where things are at. Just a reminder on the process of the legislative session. This is a long session. It's a 6-month marathon where legislators are building a 2-year budget for the state. So what is passed in June will then be what the state operates in for 2 fiscal years. The legislature is in a bit of a holding pattern while they wait for the May revenue forecast, which will determine the amount of resources, both general fund and bond, that they have to allocate this biennium. So we're hoping good things, but potential federal cuts, a looming recession, legislators are rightfully so feeling a bit conservative with resources. So that May revenue forecast will be an important indicator, and we'll be watching for the responses from legislative leadership to understand how much of an indicator that is and how conservative they'd like to be as they make their budget.
Nicole, just one real quick question. Is that date like mid-May, right? Is that right? Or is it end of May-ish?
Typically mid-May.
Yeah.
It does move around, but we'll certainly bring back an update on.
And there's public visibility for that too. Right?
Absolutely. The House Revenue Committee and Senate Revenue Committee meet jointly when the forecast is released.
Well, do you want to touch on the potential package we're working on with the other houses?
Absolutely. So as Executive Director Rogers mentioned, we have around 80 households that are at risk. These are resources for the emergency housing voucher that we expected to have until 2030. We're now learning we have much less time, less than half the time than we were initially told by the federal government. So in partnership, in particular with Home Forward and the Clackamas County Housing Authority, we've been working on a statewide package to support those households. We're still surveying housing authorities across the state, but it looks like over 2,000 Oregonians are being served currently by EHV across the state. And what's really remarkable in terms of our ability to serve and scary in terms of what's looming ahead of us is half of those Oregonians are children under the age of 18. So this is really a dramatic impact for communities across the state. We're working on not asking the legislature to fully fill that gap, but to help us have time to transition these households into other programs. Of course, in shortfall, we don't have the ability to transition these voucher holders to housing choice vouchers, but we're hoping if we can get some time and grace period from the legislature, we can make that transition and keep those families housed. So more to come on that. The package is still being developed, needs to go to the Public Housing Authorities of Oregon's executive committee to get endorsements.
Jog my memory, there's one thing Melinda and BNF and I talked about a couple months, probably 3 months ago now, is taking that letter and creating sort of a template that we could share with the committee so that you could do personal support if you want. But you don't have to start from scratch. Would the committee be interested in a template like that?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would say, because I'm in touch with a few folks in the House.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get their thoughts on what they're supporting or not. So
That'd be great. And we'll connect with BNF.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
Just can I ask a follow-up question on the collaboration effort with other housing authorities? Is this isn't because they're unutilized emergency vouchers, or is it more to get a priority funding that would include all like 2,000 vouchers, like a forward commitment? Is it more the latter, where you're just trying to make sure that there is funding going forward for that collective group of vouchers? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and when this was announced in the program, no new housing authorities have not leased up new households since September 2023.
Yep.
So like it just froze, and we knew it was going to be a natural attrition, and we had 89, we got our 100% utilization, and then we started losing folks and since then, but it's just been a slow rate. So yeah, and then that's just to help carry those folks that we were anticipating to carry through 2029.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to ongoing business. We have Lisa Varon, Jill Chin, and Jess Larson to continue our conversation from last month's meeting regarding real estate and transitional housing. For those following along with the agenda, please note we are switching the order of the transitional housing agenda item and the 3 to 5 year real estate. I hate that word. That plan, we will start with the plan. Lisa, I will pass it over to you to kick things off, and we will then move directly to the transitional housing agenda item.
Thank you. Again, Jill Chen, and I just wanted to set the stage first. As we talk about the real estate strategy, this is something that we had committed to bring back to the Housing Authority Council Committee. And it really is to set the framework of what is the role of the Housing Authority in this housing, you can call it spectrum and landscape. What you'll see today is really, as Molly, myself, and Lisa were talking about it, we realized it's more of a plan for a plan. This is our strategy. What is our basic framework for the role of the Housing Authority? It's not the big, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that, we're gonna do this, because like Co-Chair King said, what about social housing? What about all these other things? We need to have continuing dialogue with you as our partners to help shape the larger strategy. This is our strategy and the framework by which we will sort of try to engage in what is the role of the Housing Authority. So I hand it over to my colleague.
Thank you, Jill. I'm Lisa Varon. I use she, her pronouns. Happy to be here today. You'll notice it's now called a 5-year real estate strategy. We decided 3 to 5 was a little too vague. So we're going with a 5-year real estate strategy. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about our past and current real estate activities, the purpose of the strategy, which Jill kind of already covered, goals and objectives, and then we'd like to open it up for discussion with you. And that's why we're calling it a draft. Next slide. So I wanted to take a minute to just talk, I thought, well, if we're looking ahead 5 years, let's look back 5 years. And 5 years ago, the Housing Authority owned and operated 884 units. Now we're up to 1,148 units. We had no LIHTC properties, and now we have 4 LIHTC properties. And I just want to be clear, 2 of those are the AHP projects, each with 10 properties within them, right? So, and then we were a partner in 7 properties and about 1,500 units, and now we're a partner in 11 properties and almost 2,000 units. So those are not the properties we own and operate, but properties where we're a special limited partner or other kind of unique partnership roles. I do also want to add, just going back here, that in 2020, we had about 175 project-based vouchers at 11 properties. And now we have 476 at 34 properties. So our project-based voucher program has really exploded also in the last 5 years. Just, it's not on this chart because this is the owner operator chart, but I also kind of wanted to add this perspective on how this integration of Department of Housing Services has really played out over the last 5 years. Next slide.
Oh,
Yeah,
question.
Am I doing quick math? 2,000 to 4,000 total units? Is that the delta, right? 2020.
No, it's 884 to 1148. So
I'm not totaling all of those.
Oh, it's not
Yes.
it's not the delta. This
Got
is just total.
Got it. Thank you.
next slide. Okay, so our 1,148 units, 891 of those units are our owned and operated units, LIHTC, rural, just kind of random reasons why they showed up at the Housing Authority. And then we have 257 units that are public housing, and also some single family homes that have come to us through different programs. We're running at about a 93% occupancy with both portfolios. I'd like to see us at 95 or above. That's typically how we've underwritten those. This is, I was actually at a BizNow event yesterday and the affordable housing developers there were sharing that generally they're all running 92 to 93% occupancy, and it is posing problems for them. Longer term, we seem to be doing all right. And we can talk some more about that as we go through the plan. Next slide. Okay, so I know there's a lot here to digest, so we'll just start at the bottom left-hand corner, and we're going to talk about our pipeline, our development pipeline. So this is specific to Hawk, not to the county as a whole, not to our role as a lender or investor in properties, just the properties that we're owning, operating, developing. So this summer, as Jill mentioned, we're looking at converting to perm, which means we close out all of our expensive construction financing and move to our lower cost permanent financing and move into permanent operations. We are looking to look on a permanent housing site in Forest Grove and get started on the pre-development, active pre-development of that property. And this spring, actually, not the summer, we're expecting the sale of our first Section 18 disposition. So Section 18 disposition is, we have 60 units, single-family homes in our portfolio of public housing that HUD has approved for us to sell. And we came up with a program that I call a win-win-win program where we sell those houses, they get sold primarily or prioritized for low to moderate income home ownership with our community partners. And then if they're not sold that way, they go to market. So really, and then the profits from the Section 18 are reinvested into our portfolio and new multifamily affordable housing, which we find to be more useful.
Hi, question. So through the disposition of the Section 18, the 60 units, will that then, the 257 units of public housing will then go down to 197?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we should also mention that there are a few units that are not under the public housing. We're also disposing of those, and that is in addition to the 60 that we're getting. It's just very difficult to manage.
It's also single family homes, so.
And you have
Yeah,
like
exactly.
tenant protection vouchers and whatnot.
Yeah, so
Yes.
so we're working with DDB and tenant protection vouchers. We have a handful of households that are actually gonna buy the home they live in. We're about 5. And then we're working with the community. We have an open RFQ for our community partners to come in and be a part of it. So we've got Portland Housing Center, the
Sienna,
Okay.
Sienna
Star,
It's Proud Ground.
Proud Ground,
Okay, yeah.
Habitat,
and Habitat Quality.
Okay.
So we have 5 so far, but we're leaving it open because if other groups want to come in and there's a reason. There are a couple of properties that seem kind of actually better for more of a group home scenario. So we're hoping we can invite some partners in who do more of that kind of work. Yeah.
Hi, was the African American Alliance?
Yes, and the African American Alliance, yeah. And they've all been giving us great feedback and helping us shape the program in a way that they can work with us. So it's been a really iterative and process that I think has gone well. So in the fall, we're expecting to finish our AHP phase 2 construction. And at the end of September, we're gonna close our financing for Woodspring and start construction. Woodspring is 172 units, 2-bedroom homes in Tigard, primarily seniors, but we think over time that project will sort of morph into families, given the unit types. That's a preservation deal. And then toward moving into the following year, Aloha 209 is a property in unincorporated Washington County where we're looking to build 85 units on a property that also includes wetlands. And we're looking at trying to create some public space, available public open space, not active because it's wetlands, but and we're looking we're hoping at that point we'll have assembled our financing, of course, for the PSA project, and those 2 projects would move along in lockstep. We're also starting on a transitional housing project. We're hoping that'll be done And then moving into the following year, Woodspring will be completed and, you know, over the course, and we're gonna talk a little bit about this throughout the rest of the presentation, we're looking at assessing and repositioning our assets in the portfolio. So we'll talk about that. Next slide. So the key opportunities of putting together a strategy is that we can identify and achieve our strategic goals. We can better plan for funding and other resources, and we can really focus on recognizing and meeting community needs. Otherwise, we're just kind of going along opportunity by opportunity, really wanting to think strategically. Because we're, as Molly mentioned earlier, we're coming out of a very resource-rich period in which a lot happened very fast. And now we're looking to be more strategic about what we're doing, regardless of the level of resources. Next slide. I just added this slide in here to talk about, you'll hear us talk about the housing continuum in this conversation about where do we as the Department of Housing Services and Housing Authority in Washington County, what is our role in this continuum? Where do we want to be? Do we, you know, owner, operator, investor, encourager, you know, what is our role? We primarily kind of live in this subsidized, well, we've kind of been doing everything up to affordable home ownership on this continuum. But we're really having these conversations, and we want to have this conversation with you about where we need to be focusing our energy and resources. Next slide. Okay, on to the goals and objectives. So these are the 5-year strategy goals. You'll see it's a balance between real estate development and managing our portfolio, which is an ongoing challenge throughout the region, throughout the country. We're looking at developing a prioritized evaluation framework for housing opportunities. So when opportunities come our way, how do we even gauge our interest in them? Building a sustainable real estate operation, creating a sustainable pipeline. We like that word, sustainable. Position the real estate portfolio for long-term resiliency and operate a best-in-class asset management program. Next slide. So for the evaluation framework, what we're really talking about here is when new opportunities come our way, how do we know that they're the right opportunity for us? So we want to identify the gaps and needs in Washington County. An intern working on that already. Identify the who, what, and where of our future development projects. Are we focusing on certain types, on certain populations served, on certain locations, or are we focusing on balance? And then and having that conversation with this group here is just a really important part of understanding where we want to be in the next 5 years. Next slide. So building a sustainable real estate operation. So Jill and I have been working on growing our staff, building our bench of consultants, and building our bench of partners so that we can achieve goals. We want to be flexible about how we approach housing opportunities, our ownership, our financing models. What we're proposing here is that we don't necessarily go out and say we only develop. How do we find a role? And a really good example would be Bethany 1 and 2. We had a role in helping without those preservation deals come through the bridge. We wouldn't have been able to do that on our own, right? So we want to strategically utilize and leverage our available resources. We want to optimize housing. And we also want to use data and analytics. So we want to be grounding ourselves in real information. Next slide. Our development pipeline, we're looking at creating a sustainable development pipeline throughout the county, diversifying new projects, supporting preservation, integrating our work with SHS. So we've recently kind of made a change where I have a new staff person and he's going to be supporting the access centers, transitional housing, permanent supportive housing. We want to advocate for funding and policies that they go in lockstep. You can't do development without those. And we want to pursue long-term sustainable opportunities. So really, trying to avoid those kind of short-term hits of opportunity and really choosing opportunities that are going to be lasting assets to the community. Next slide, thanks. So this is the repositioning slide. Our portfolio, part of why we had this recent re-syndication is the portfolio needed a lot of work. We want a portfolio that is long-term resilient and that it's aligned with our strategic objectives and sustainability. Is a 12-unit project really standalone project with a 9.5% interest rate, really what we want to have in our portfolio, right? So what we're going to be doing, what we're proposing to do is to prepare and implement a portfolio optimization and repositioning plan where we establish some goals and priorities, we pinpoint assets that can be improved, and we determine how we want to deal with underperforming or misaligned assets. But do we develop those sites? Do we sell them if they're not developable at a minimum number of units? Just big questions about some of our existing operating properties. And then, of course, we have to secure those resources to execute. Next slide. We want to be operating a best-in-class asset management program. We want to steward and invest our properties, our owned and invested properties, so that they can be resilient and sustainable, that residents are safe, comfortable, satisfied. And so historically, the housing authority has kind of worked off of a property management model and not an asset management model. And when you think about it, I can see why that was the case, because they also didn't have LIHTC properties until HP, the 2 HPs in the Belfry. So really, we're kind of new to the world of owning tax credit properties and all those reporting and asset requirements associated with having investors. But also we have, like everybody else, we have aging properties, we have different populations, and we want to have a standardized approach. We want to evolve our performance and portfolio monitoring. We want to establish a document management system, integrate our capital needs planning and projections. We kind of want to look across the portfolio, not building by building, about where capital needs are going to be. We want to, no surprises. That's what I like to say. I don't want there to be too many surprises. There will be some, but nominal. And then we also want to select and utilize an asset management platform. We're currently using Yardi over in the Housing Authority voucher side. So we're taking a look and meeting with Yardi at the time. Next slide. So I'm going to hand it back to Jill I know that's a lot to digest. This is just our first conversation about this. And I'm going to hand it over to Jill to facilitate discussion.
Thanks, Lisa. We're going to be combining our real estate strategy with our discussion from last time when we talked about transitional housing. Because we think we didn't quite have enough time to talk about that spectrum. And where do you all see us and us adding value and being additive to that host housing spectrum? So there are some key questions that I wanted to have the discussion with you about where do you see the housing gaps in the county? We're also going to be looking at that ourselves and getting data and analytics, working with the metro and the state and the region about gaps in the area, but especially in the county. And then where do you see the roles for the housing authority to really come in and advance housing solutions across the county? Again, last time you heard about our role and our changing role, where we went in, and this is related to the third question, where you saw we came in and was asked to step in, with a transitional housing acquisition of a hotel. Where Central City Concern had to step back, and they asked us to come in and essentially be the owner, they acting as our development consultant. And then also you heard about our role in permanent supportive housing in Forest Grove, where we are gonna be coming in as the developer. But then is that the appropriate role for us?
Don't forget, Bruce actually brought up the transitional housing hotel earlier this morning, so you may want to loop back at some point about when
Yes.
when we'll get more information about that.
And then I'm just gonna go back and talk about some of the long-term and short-term considerations. Like the transitional housing, is that a short-term consideration or do you think of it as long-term? Because we came in on a request from our partner to step in because of the need to act fast, because a purchase and sale agreement was expiring. And this was a great hotel for the purpose. So what is our role, long-term, short-term? And what are the implications for these real estate assets that's gonna be in our even called purview? And what is our role to maintain those? Because we also work with partners who may have permanent supportive housing, and we all know these buildings, they're really gonna be used, right? There's gonna be a lot of repairs, a lot of maintenance, ongoing capital needs. Where do we, what do we stand? What is our long-term, short-term needs? Funding as well. And then what else should we consider while developing a strategic direction? And this goes to Ryan's earlier questions about what else are we going to be doing? Is it social housing? Where's that range of roles? And again, where's that range of funding? Where's that range of opportunities? So maybe what we can do is, this is going to be an ongoing discussion with you all, but what we really wanted to focus on in this discussion is that bullet point number 3, maybe bullet point number 2, 3, and 4, because we do have that transitional housing and permanent supportive housing. And what do you see as our role? And I see you with a lot of sort of bubbles, so please start.
It's actually called confusion because I am the elderly rep. I look like that all the time. The county or someone, we have a balance sheet, yeah?
Yeah.
How big is that balance sheet-ish? So that could be a follow-up. And the reason I started there is just math, right? So at some point, there's assets, there's revenue, and those expenses, which answer a lot of those questions. And so could I ask that we go back 3 or 4 slides where it showed the continuum?
Yeah.
Kind of the housing is helpful visually to ask maybe the question of there. If you basically said, these are the things that we touch, different facets within the county, we need more acronyms also, by the way, more acronyms would be super helpful. If you put a % of effort or dollars, where do we spend our Monday through Friday? Does it go 2%, 5%, 100%, 75%? And the reason I ask is if you say this is a point in time, and there's only so much revenue that's going to show up, and expenses always show up faster than revenue, how should we allocate those dollars based on where we are today? And again, you don't have to do it as a test. It'd just be a nice follow-up for perspective, because I get questions in the community when I tell people I'm doing this. And that's how I got what about this place? I heard that it's going to be a subsidized housing or transitional housing or affordable rental. It'll help me answer the questions a bit better on what percentages of things we touch now and what percentages of things we'd like to touch 5 years from now and how that might change. That was more a run-on sentence than a question, but hopefully that made some sense.
That's a great question for us.
Okay.
Because we're right now in the process of pulling together our real estate, real estate. Yeah, our
Right.
our schedule, right? So, and it is very different than maybe what we spend our time on.
Right.
Because I was talking with another real estate developer owner in affordable housing, and he's more towards the affordable home, not home ownership, but 60%, the stable 60% owns over 1,000 units.
Yeah.
And they're like, we have no operational issue. Yes, we still operate and we're difficult, but it's not like property's falling apart, right? So where do we sit in that spectrum and what is our percentage that we need in order to potentially cross-subsidize? Because we also know, for example, working with the homeless services team, with shelters and transitional housing, those are not necessarily money generators.
Right. Yeah, and that was kind of the basis, my background is on the right side, right? So affordable, when you say affordable housing, I think ownership, right? Which was my background. And those are the people I kind of touch in those three funnels out there. So again, it'd be kind of nice to know that the world that we see, we'd like to improve those last three funnels by 2.5% each over the next 5 years, whatever it is. Because then when I'm having a conversation with someone, I say, oh, this fits into some things that we're working on. Would you have interest?
I'm gonna just add, I'd like, big swooping arrows that come in with dollars.
Yeah, right.
Under, on each one, because I think as someone coming in new, in the last 10 months, there's been an entire build out of housing, the housing continuum infrastructure based on monies that have come in from SHS and from Metro, affordable housing bond. And so, whereas there weren't access centers, whereas there wasn't transitional housing, whereas there wasn't, I think we built 2,000 or 3,000 units with Metro, since we got all the Metro money countywide.
Oh, I don't think they're 3,000. I don't think they're that high.
I think we're 1,000 just for
Yeah.
Hawk properties.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's very dependent on the flow of the funds, but there are many, much of the housing in Washington County has been funded, wasn't here before. It was kind of
Right.
starting from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so anything like that would be helpful, just as we talk to folks in the community, because I ultimately you should be able to give me properties. I should be able to have a test and I should be able to put those properties in the appropriate funnels. I'm not sure I could do that today.
Yes, and that's the purpose of the framework, right?
Yeah.
Is that we're also able to say there's a prioritization of what's
Right,
on this
exactly.
continuum.
Yeah, it's only math, right? There's so much dollars and we have to allocate it as
And I would
such.
say there's not only that, but there's also, our region is very large, right?
Yes,
Washington County goes from all the way, down Sherwood, all the way up over,
that's great.
past Forest Road, so it's a very large, and where are our assets, so to say?
Yep.
And where's the money and where's the need? And who are we trying to serve?
Yeah.
But I think I cut off a couple people. Yes, Paul.
So I just started, I congratulate the Housing Authority on this effort and really trying to be strategic here. I think it's great seeing the evolution, and I'm new to the party here, but I think the follow-up question on balance sheet is really important, and really profitability of sort of transitional housing, permanent supportive housing. And I think I would qualify that just because it's not just what's happened in the last month, but in the last couple of years, there have been challenges at the national level. And I'd say Central City Concerns by one of the best, an example, one of the best organizations working on permanent supportive housing. But there have been other stories that aren't so good. So I think when you look at the profitability, for example, of permanent supportive housing or transitional housing, I think you would have like two buckets. One is leveraging private capital, where you're going to potentially need a larger balance sheet. And that's what's happening. Some of the private capital is saying, because of the challenges in that market, especially let's say, I know it from a tax credit side, but maybe non-tax credit properties are still a challenge on services and operating costs. Because of the challenge for private capital, new private capital to come, you might need a greater liquidity test to be met. So I think it is something that if you have state funding or local funding, you could do that without leveraging private capital, and you might not need the same balance sheet. So that might be more profitable. but maybe that's a few deals versus if you wanted to do 5 or 10, you would need to leverage private capital. And that trend, it seems much more onerous than traditional affordable housing. So again, I think, and you may have some of this, but I think trying to bear down a little bit or get into the details a little bit about what the potential profitability is of those different housing types. And really, how much will it impact potentially your balance sheet? You have to put at risk.
Hearing, a desire to see how the math is mapping on not just net cash flow, but also assets liabilities balance sheet. In addition, by portfolio type, really, so shelters, transitional, from supportive housing, affordable, particular. And then we have, really the strategy is then meshing that with the community need and how we are geographically. Where is the greatest need? Are we serving that need? And then, of course, how do we work as a group here of, let's make sure we are playing the appropriate role, because we wear many hats in this community. And we just want to be really explicit with folks. So in this instance, we are going to be an owner operator, but in this instance, we're actually a funder. And we're lending resources in. And so some of these math equations are frankly us trying to
For sure.
be really make sure we're setting ourselves up similarly to how we are as setting up other partners, how we're funding them as so we're having to play both roles. We're just wanting to be transparent.
Yeah, I wanna, yeah, like what you said is what's ringing in my brain right now of, yes, there's the money side, which is you have to keep going. You have to, if you're successful, you need to build more, you need to help more people. The 5-year strategic plan is awesome. Developed a few my company over the years, and it really gives you good measurable goals every year. And at the end of the 5 years, you're like, holy cow, like hit that, and had you not set those goals, you wouldn't have achieved it. One thing we're working on now, it's interesting to try to think private versus obviously the housing board, but we inspired ourselves by reading the Infinite Game. It's about a long-term strategy versus the short-term 5-year, and how it helps businesses change that mindset from what you were saying of like, yes, we need to make sure the money works, but what's our greater purpose? And setting that long-term greater purpose is really important. So to kind of put that in perspective, you might make 5 years of small decisions, and at the end of the 5 years, you realize that there's more homeless people than there were at that 5 years, even though you met all your goals and did great work. I feel like the housing authority's long-term plan is to not exist anymore, right? Your goals in that 5-year plan should be moving towards this community doesn't exist, because we solved the real problems that are creating the housing crisis, homelessness and drug addiction, all of that stuff.
Oh, Ryan, and a UTO candidate. And I quote the Bible, will always be with us.
Yeah, and it's not,
I'm sorry, I couldn't help that.
it's a totally unachievable goal, but that's the,
What's the name of it?
it's the Infinite Game. So that's kind of the opposite of like the Infinite Game about corporate business is about, you want to be there forever. You're not making decisions to profit now, you're making decisions to be there forever. Like
It's the inverse.
it's the inverse, yeah.
The perspective's correct.
Yeah.
Can we go back to the continuum slide again? So in my opinion, and please feel free to push back, but from a service provider perspective, I think that there is a gap, when we're talking about emergency shelters, transitional housing, getting to subsidized affordable. And then I think that there is a natural graduation to, I think, intentional workforce housing. And I'm just curious if there's space for that. you know, the 60 to 80% all the way up to 100%. I feel like sometimes going from affordable, you know, 0 to 60% and then making that jump to 100 to 120% AMI is too much of a leap. And I think that should be space for intentional workforce housing.
Yeah.
That's a great point, and we did not have it in there because that was a visual from another place, but you're absolutely right. Yes, in the current market, there seems to be a lot of discussion also about workforce housing. And the fact that 61 to maybe 100% AMI, there's just insufficient.
Right.
Yeah, housing. Oh, yes. We still have time. So, please, tell us more.
The missing middle is huge, right? I mean, was it the city of Hillsborough that presented their stats that showed that the 0 to 30 had a negative delta of housing, and then the 30 to 60 had like 3 times more than it needed, but that housing is getting pulled away from all the other market sectors?
That actually came from our consolidated plan, you know, our office of community development, they did on. And they showed, it's again, another inverse.
Yeah.
Where we so underbuilt on the 0 to 30, there's, we get into market, you know, that sort of line between workforce, market. On that, where we're sort of subsidizing. It is, you can't, it's not, if you just isolate down to the households who are earning in that one tranche. Yeah, you could say we have more houses, but when you look at it with large overall inventory, we still don't have enough, and it creates a bigger gap proportionally for these women.
And unfortunately, what happens, what I've seen before, not so much in Washington County, because I don't have the data, but what I saw certainly in the Portland area, this front housing bill, is that the folks in housing are all, especially in mental health, they're all rent burdened. So if you're 61%, you're in the housing that's not necessarily costing us, but maybe costing them 80%. And the 80 may be more than 85 and 80%. So everything gets squished. And then the folks in the 0 to 30, they have nowhere to go.
And you're also competing against people that are at 120 or higher.
Yes. And also we note up here, we do not have things such as naturally occurring affordable housing. And how does that play, especially in so much of our community where there is maybe housing stock, but it could be potentially being gentrified and displaced.
From just a quick equity standpoint, missing middle income versus workforce. It's a passion of mine because everyone on this is our workforce, from subsidized housing to market home ownership. Yeah. Yeah.
I will note that that market home is a nice house. 3 stories.
You do actually have a, anyway. It'd be nice to add a map, I think, of our existing assets. Yep.
And I think that is one that we've been asked, I've asked the data team to work on, which is a map of all of our sort of owned assets. Those LP, including those limited partnerships, but our owned assets, as well as that which is our invested assets. Because there is a lot more that, for example, like Glenbeck Gardens, those are invested assets, right? Regulated. And then we need another map with all of our homeless services assets. So we can see where those assets are and where our housing assets, because some of those would probably be a nice visual.
Just a quick clarification question on the slide you had with the vacancy rates. It looked like the bigger block was on, it looked like section 18 properties, but it of the 7%, is that right? Where that pie looked bigger? and it looked like it was almost 5% or something, but it seems like that's probably not what your portfolio would be showing.
Yeah, so, the, we have vacant and vacant construction, so we have, not all of the 60 units are vacant. So, I think 10 of the 60 units are currently vacant. So that's why that number looks as small as it does. And we wanted to be able to show if, and the reason why you see such a big vacancy on the left-hand side is because the AHP 2 project has a significant amount of vacancies while it's been going through construction, temporary vacancies.
Lisa, are the legends reversed? The key, section 18 is under affordable
Yeah.
versus public housing.
Yeah, no, the number is actually,
Oh, no, it's the key.
yeah, oh, the key might be, oh, right, I think the key might be, that's right, you're right.
Sorry about
They
that.
may have been flipped. Sorry about that, yeah,
That's the issue, that's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're right.
This will be, you're right, that's why we're isolating now, true, physical, vacancy versus, being held for other things. Probably almost.
So
And certainly for the section 18, as more residents move out because of the tenant protection vouchers, those probably increase. While we're looking in the process of finding and helping a lower income potential buyer.
We'll probably see a bump up also in fall with the wood spring, with the temporary relocations there as well.
that's interesting, because you're really, you're at 98% occupancy, aside from doing the good work of moving homes better. Right?
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
I'm sure we have Nina online for hand raise.
Oh,
Who was it?
Nina Stafford.
oh, hi Nina, would you like to say something?
Hi, yes, so the continuum slide seems to be the one that is the most helpful with the visual, for me as well. So my question is, what is the funnel from the subsidized housing to affordable home ownership? Because it just seems like the more people you can move into affordable home ownership, the more that frees up space and you kind of keep things flowing. So is that part of the 5-year plan, or what is that looking like? And I guess part 2 of that is I see where the shortfall as far as the diversity of people being served is the workforce, or the people who are single. If you're elderly, you can get a home, but singles outside of that, getting them into one of these slots is, unless they're mentally disabled or something, aren't getting a slot in these. So kind of a 2-part question there.
Nana, this is Jess Larson. I'm happy to lend a hand here with the real estate team and offer that the question you asked about how people move through from one housing type to another and how we're thinking about that as part of our strategy is absolutely a part of our work and strategy. From the homeless services system perspective, which is the work I get to do mostly on my Monday through Friday hours, Bruce, we're constantly, the whole purpose of emergency shelter is a safe place to sleep and get services to get to connections to transitional housing, where you're getting that programmatic behavioral health or recovery supports, or subsidized housing, which could also be called permanent subsidized housing here on this list, or sorry, permanent supportive housing. And then in our permanent supportive housing programs, our case managers are also trained to do continuous case management and engagement, helping folks get ready and stable and supported and increase their income and get back to work if that is a part of their plan, so that they can move out of PSH and into regular affordable housing, or just have the subsidized voucher. It's not always, I'm just gonna be pretty frank and blunt, it's not always realistic to hope that folks are moving then on further in our system of housing, because the vast majority of households that we're supporting live on extremely low incomes and have disabling conditions, where the goal is really just to get to Social Security income and just have enough to pay their portion of the rent. And home ownership is often too far of a reach for many of the households we're serving in our programs. But it's not out of reach categorically. And I think there's actually a really good story from our Section 18 disposition, which I'll pass off to Jill.
Yeah, and I think, this really looks at how do we serve that spectrum? In our Section 18 disposition, our public housing portfolio, the vast majority of the households, when we looked at the income, they earned, I think, less than 50,000, and many of them were less than 30,000 a year. There was only a handful that earned more than 80,000. So we were looking at this in terms of how do we help any of those households acquire a home? And how do you stabilize? Because many of the folks in our public housing have lived there for many, many years. These are not folks who've been there just a year or 2 years. They've been there, I want to say maybe decades, some maybe that long. But it's a you can call it a influence with income. But so we did have that handful who is able to buy. Actually, the first one to buy is closing May 31st. And it's a household from our, community. So there is that possibility, but I also want to caution that it is something to celebrate every time I want them buy a home. Because essentially they've gone to that home ownership. So it's, I don't know, I would say maybe 10%, maybe less than 10, it's a handful out of the 60.
But I do think it is important to also have the conversation, and social housing actually talks about this, right? About whether or not home ownership is always the goal, right? And for some households having a permanently subsidized rental unit is better situation.
Yeah, great.
So, and it affords them other opportunities to be able to have after rent income that can work the cost of living.
Lisa, that's why I ask as a percentage to know that, because you're exactly right. Just because it might be my vision, it doesn't mean it's everybody's vision with each one of those, right? And then when we have to allocate dollars or actions, we're not going through denial in what we're trying to do as a, as an entity. So I think it's a great point.
Yeah, some percentage can and want to move on to home ownership and then develop programs like the community trust. I was hoping Aiken was here. People came about.
Yeah. Yes, he's one of our partners also in the Section 18, yes.
And I want to add, it's also, what I'd like you all to think about is, not necessarily the housing authority as the builder, developer, owner, operator of everything on this continuum. But where are we pushing the needle with our partners, and what are we doing to help our partners go on the wall to do some part of this continuum better, maybe we're not best suited to do.
I actually had a question on that transitions to the question I had from looking at this last night of the maintaining your existing properties and making sure that you're doing the right thing there as well. Other housing authorities, it's a complete mixed bag. Some housing authorities say when we take that on ourselves, the quality of the maintenance is amazing, and the tenant care is amazing, and some is like that was a disaster. So curious of what Hawk is thinking about this far, because a lot of that maintenance is part right now.
Well, it's a combination, it depends. So if we have a property and all the decks, as the way it's situated, there's a bunch of decks, $100,000 less than. make in the property has no reserves. So how did we get to a point where the property has no reserve, right? So this is a question we have to ask as an organization. What do we need to be able to handle these kinds of situations for properties if the property doesn't have enough cash flow to fund it? So, do we capitalize reserves? Do we accept reserve? How do we spend it? How do we prioritize? You know, of course, fire and safety is always first, but when do the roofs get changed? Do they get changed at 15 years or 20 years? Pushing to their limit, right? So all those kinds of questions. And we have property management firms that manage those properties, but they're not responsible for the capital investments that might be needed above normal wear and tear and what's available on reserve. So these are the kinds of questions we're asking too, because while we're doing rehabs now, and talking about the infinite game, 20 years from now, those properties that we've just done, and I had the pleasure of working on a re-syndication of a syndication that I had worked on early in my career, like they're gonna have problems again.
Yeah, and I would also say in your question about how do we work with our partners, and especially what we're hearing in the industry is that property management is a gap in the whole industry, right? And especially as we're moving towards, you can call it that side of that spectrum, where it's really high needs services, there may not be folks who are necessarily trauma informed or have a mission in terms of serving or experience serving that high need. So what is our role in that property management versus what is our role in, if we're owner, operator and everything, we're not the direct delivery of services, right? We work with our partners. So how do we work with our partners? But also a question of, do we even want to own and operate? Do we just want to develop and say, maybe master lease with somebody, or maybe work with some other partners so they are the owner and operator. So what is that range? All of these different things that we can come into play. And this is where I think your input would be really.
I know you know Jessica J. moved to a friend's day. She was one who I talked about when she got that in-house. And then her was the housing, brought the social service side in-house.
I think
It sounds like what you're saying, we need to add maybe a particular question to this list. Under that, especially under, whether it's under our asset management role or really under one of the other goals perhaps around.
Yeah, maybe
Our best, role in operations and service.
Yeah, what we have is this housing continuum. I think we maybe add another item, which is here's the different roles and what are some of the risks and what are some of the market gaps.
Yeah, and I'll just add, when or if we don't have property management firms that are doing their job, our asset management team has to come and do their job for them and take them away from the.
And we also have the same experience with repairs and maintenance because our public housing, all that repairs and maintenance is mostly done in-house. We also contract with, on-call service providers. But a lot of that ongoing regular light bulbs, clean it. I mean, all this stuff that happens. Is that what we should be doing? Just contract it all out?
Is the goal to keep and maintain the remaining public housing units, or are there future Section 18 applications?
In that little winding path, one of the things is looking at the housing portfolio optimization. And it's not until 2028 because it takes us a little while to think about the properties and look at all the remaining 188 units, 180 units. And where are they located? What's the zoning? What's the size? Can we redevelop or do we go for another district?
Can I jump in here, Jill? I think, I just, this has been an excellent conversation, and as the team here has wisely shared, this will be an ongoing discussion to refine and develop our home and strategic plan. But I just want to like put it on the table really directly and frankly with y'all. We've been super responsive to funding and need in our community and stepped into roles we haven't previously held. And we think it's the right thing to do, and we're finding ourselves a bit sometimes out over our skis or challenged with these new roles and responsibilities. So I just want to share the hotel that Bruce was speaking to earlier was an important opportunity where we stepped up and responded to a need for transitional housing, and a partner not able to step into the role they had originally envisioned. And so it was important for us to secure the 90-unit hotel that would become transitional housing. And now we're wondering what next. Similarly, we did that with the acquisition of Aloha Quality Inn, I think in 2020, before my time here. And now that's permanent supportive housing, and it's a hard building to manage. And we're providing permanent supportive housing for 54 people who would otherwise be homeless. So both ends, right? And we have this wonderful opportunity in Forest Grove through the PSH Institute with the Oregon Housing and Community Services, where we hope to bring on further additional permanent supportive housing in Forest Grove in the next few years. Because the funding is there, because there's drive and community commitment to these kinds of investments, because the need is so clear. And it's putting the housing authority, Jill and I spend a lot of times after hours, like figuring out how we're going to shift our models and strategies to be able to support these buildings and important investments. So just to put the context very directly in front of you, this is a day-to-day conversation for us, and we think it's important work to continue, questions to continue ask ourselves and to continue asking them, because they're hard to answer.
And I'm noticing that the time has already come up, and I'm sure we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. So this is something I do want you all to carry away, because we will continuously be coming back to you for feedback and input and guidance, really. What are you seeing? What do we need to help us move along this path? I also want to sort of say, I really thank this opportunity to hear your thoughts.
I wanted to also just invite anybody who feels more comfortable with a one-on-one conversation to have invite us to, we can have a cup of coffee with you, get on a phone call, and in the big group conversation doesn't always work for everybody, but we want to invite you to give us your feedback and input. I'm hearing a couple of key next step deliverables out of this conversation, just to summarize sort of obviously, this is a plan to plan, so we'll have many opportunities to for you guys to react to things that we flesh out, but the sort of immediate three things I heard was some kind of REO schedule that better understands our portfolio types by the kind of net operating income and balance sheet implications. Number one. Number two is some kind of role matrix, help kind of flesh out what the various roles we're playing by each of these portfolio types to kind of help you guys guide us and where that makes sense. And then three, I'm trying to remember now, is a map, backward assets. That anything else come to mind for that immediate next step for everyone?
I had one. So along with the other numbers would be maybe with each housing type, what the income is, the medium income, or the to kind of know who's being served in each of those housing types, to get a better idea of who the demographics are in each of those.
Yep, some kind of AMI target would be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, next agenda item is the budget orientation. I will now pass it over to Molly and Mersada.
Joe also.
And Joe, all
Is that you
right.
starting on?
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself.
Kick it off, Joe.
Hi, guys. My name is Joe Tripolo, and I'm gonna look at my sign so I can identify what I do here because about 3 times. I am an interim person here. That means I've come in November, so I've been here about 5-6 months now. I am in the finance department. Everything that everybody's doing, we're trying to keep track of. They're just racing ahead of us. There's a group of 10 people. They're accountants and finance people. I'm joined here with Mersada. She's over in the middle, and she's gonna join in on this conversation in a minute. We're gonna talk about the budget side of this. And that budget is, of course, a roadmap to where we're going. Jill, Jess, Lisa, and the gang have the vision, and we're going to try to keep track of that vision, money-wise. I have a group of 10 people, like I said, and they have a variety of requirements made of them. We pay out the vouchers. About $50 million worth of vouchers every year go out through checks. Keep track of the accounting for the properties when we are maintaining them. So we have bills that are going out each month to fix roofs, mow the lawn, clean the windows, etc. So we pay those bills. We also keep track then of the accounting for the purchases, acquisition accounting of the variety of activities that you're seeing here. We have some slides here we'll get started with. And the agenda is to say we have a mission, the Housing Advisory Committee role, the budget calendar, fund structures, areas of focus, what's next, etc. Some very basic, because we're the finance people, we don't have really pretty slides, we have basic slides. We'll go to the next one. I think all of you guys have now identified what the department, our mission is, as you can see, but we can read through it if we wanted to. The Department of Housing Services creates pathways out of homelessness, promotes housing stability, and invests in affordable communities for Washington County and our residents. We'll go on to the next one. What are our duties and responsibilities? And those duties and responsibilities are for this group here, not just what the Housing Authority is, but what the Advisory Committee is. And those bullet points say that we are to meet publicly, receive proposed budgets. We provide an opportunity for public input during our meetings here. This is what we're doing now. We receive and analyze the proposed budgets. We revise the proposed budgets as necessary based on our discussions in this room. We approve budgets and recommend to the housing. We approve the budget as a team and recommend to the Housing Authority Board. The Housing Authority Board will review and revise, approve, and adopt budgets. And we can go on to the next slide. And here's the timeline. Basically, we start this in the March-April timeframe. We meet today just to identify what the process is going to be. So we're April 24th. I heard 25th, but maybe we're the 24th. And so then after this, in a month now, we'll reconvene and go over some actual numbers. Here's us describing there's a budget. It's a roadmap. And then we go to the ABOD. And we get approval for that budget after we discuss it, get recommendations, get your feedback. And I'm hesitating because I wanted to, Bruce, you got me pulling out my computer here. I had my computer down. I was just gonna sit around, listen to what you guys are saying, but you're throwing out numbers. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the intricacies of the Housing Authority. And that is, there's a balance sheet. I could throw out some numbers. I can tell you there's $200 million in assets that are on the balance sheet. I can tell you that we have discretely component units that have another $200 million in assets out there. So we're talking $400 million of assets if you were to look at the balance sheet. However, this discussion would go on for hours because there is so much going on with what we are doing as far as we own buildings, but we lease buildings. We own buildings and we maintain buildings. We have vouchers that we are distributing, but have no assets related to those. So most of the cash in and cash out are related to vouchers. So if you looked at the P&L,
the P&L just looks like vouchers. There is some tenant revenue in there. But it's as proportionately, it's not as significant as vouchers. So, moving forward, I think what you will want to see in a budget is, as you've described, where are your activities? Where's the best use of your money? And what's more important here is best use of your cash, because you could say, yeah, you have $200 million in assets. But I'm going to tell you, most of that is like a receivable, a deferred revenue, contract receivable. It's soft. It's not something where you say, this is, I have $100 million in cash. A lot of the cash isn't even sitting on the Hawk balance sheet. A lot of the cash is sitting in supportive housing services, and that's available through the Metro Housing, supportive housing services. So a very complicated process is out there as far as having to describe it to people. And so hopefully we'll be successful in our next meeting to go through each of the categories and be able to look at the funding sources and the outs, the ins and the outs, instead of how we're spending the money. That's the time frame. I'm gonna take it over to Marsada, who's right there. I'll let her introduce herself and take it away.
I'm Marsada Gale, and financial analysis and budget manager. And I'm just gonna kind of go through some terms and like what you kind of gonna look, see when we come to present next time around. So funds, so county uses funds, it is just to kind of separate different buckets of money. So like the most simple way to think about funds is if you are banking with Bank of America and you have different accounts, like you have checking accounts, you have saving accounts, so each of those are managed and, separately. So this is the purpose of fund, that you can separate your funds and manage your revenue and expenses separately so you can report accurately to different parties. General funds, this is the fund that we get from county. This is our unrestricted funds that we can use to support our different mission. For us, it means that we are getting this money in form of match for our grants. Specific funds, special funds, they're, as name tells you, it is like funds that have certain special requirements, and they are money that are restricted. Typically, they are federal money that we are getting, state money, and different money that we are getting for to support our mission. And they are typically spent, they have specific requirements how this money can be spent. And count, we have the, our budget is broken into two parts. Department of Housing Services, we have 3 funds there, and Housing Authority of Washington County has 9 funds. And each of those funds, they manage different programs and support different programs. So next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, Department of Housing Services, as DSH, has 3 funds, and how they provide housing and homeless services. Housing homeless services is Fund 18. The funding there is mostly from HUD and Continuum of Care, and this is where we receive much from county to meet requirements of county Continuum of Care grants. Metro Affordable Housing Bond, this is the bond money that we receive, and it's typically, it's pretty much used for programs that for buying, building, and fixing up places to maintain affordable housing for our community. And Metro Supportive Housing Services, this is our bigger funder. This is what Jess and her team are managing. It's Fund 221. This budget was due in February. We submitted to, and we work in collaboration with Central Finances here at Washington County. We submitted the budget back in February 10. We made some minor adjustments in March, and this budget is currently going through final stages of review and approval. The big picture that what you gonna be focused more is Housing Authority of Washington County. This is money, this is the different programs, and we have 9 funds there. First one is supporting Fund 404 and 406. This is our rental assistance program. It is pretty much voucher program that that has, it's pretty much in collaboration with HUD and helps provide voucher assistance for the difference between these two funds is 404 is unrestricted, 406 very restricted and can be just used for affordable housing.
Housing assistance payments.
Yes, thank you. And my apology, I'm telling you, I've been here for 5 months.
You're good.
Great. So appreciate your understanding. So the other part is our public housing, and this is two components. We have two funds, 407, which is operation, and 410 is capital. And we have 244 units, and if you recall from Lisa's exciting presentation, 60 of those units gonna be sold out, and the fund's gonna be used for creating new affordable housing. And finally, the last 5 funds, they are used for development and different operation. And so monthly some of this funding is like, we have a property, they are rented under market rates. And so pretty much this is what you're gonna be seeing next month, how we budget for these 9 different funds. Please.
So our federal vouchers, as Molly alluded in our director's report that they shared this morning, we are just kind of waiting a little bit for proration to come through. For our housing assistance payments, it's still not 100%. We're told that it's going to be potentially it's still at 97%, and the inflation factor is still like a factor that we're waiting on. So we're kind of in this like medium point. We are getting word that 91% for administrative fee, that is our 404. So that 406, 404, right? Our admin fees and how we can help pay for staff and our supplies and administrating the programs is that 404. And that is the part where we're seeing a little bit more information from Congress. What we're kind of having to play around with, by not play around with, but it is like to strategize with and scenario-based play with, is that with the continuing resolution, it looks like the Congress has passed that we'll be able to consider funds being okay through the end of 2025 through January 26. But it's that, what are they going to come to in a conclusion, and how are we going to make sure that we're going to have enough housing assistance payments? We're kind of also in that waiting game around for shortfall, because when the inflation rate is published hopefully in mid-May, which is usually when we hear about this. It's fun to do budget at the time when you're waiting for the final numbers to come in, so you can like plug them in and really forecast in a more depth way. We're concerned, however, because if you can move the piece up just a little bit. Every percentage of reduction in funds that we get impact our households. So we've been serving very flat. We've only added new household members in our special purpose voucher programs, like our Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing, Mainstream, which is non-elderly disabled, FYI, which is our foster youth independence. And off of our general housing choice voucher waitlist, we have not pulled people off of that waitlist in over 2.5 years because we have not had the funds for it. So we are seeing that is stagnant. We have our tenant protection vouchers that we're getting from the disposition. We're serving new people, new vouchers that way, and then we'll be able to net any of those extra that were not leased up, but it's still being conservative. And so as we are looking at our numbers, we are going to be projecting conservative, making sure that we can kind of keep it there so we can serve our households, and then strategize as a whole continuum of a department of how we can make sure we're continuing to serve the community needs.
Question, are these numbers pulled from your 2-year tool?
Yes, they were pulled from our, that was one of the few things that were feeding into the multi-scenario piece.
Can I just make a suggestion? and I know we all probably have different experience and knowledge when it comes to this. When I got introduced to like HUD's 2-year tool, it was like a light bulb. It was an aha. So I wonder if like there's an opportunity for some sort of like, you know, session where we can all be introduced to that and other tools that you're using to get these. numbers and
Absolutely.
projections.
Yeah, like I've done like, I did like an hour lunch and learn once with staff just on the 2-year tool alone and like how it factors into our utilization. So like it is. If you want to nerd out with me on it and you can like also then like
Sure.
point on the questions, I think it is one of the many tools that HUD has that helps forecast with where we're looking at our current vouchers that we have, folks that are searching, how many that we have committed, like our project-based vouchers that we have already said that are coming online this year with the Planbeck that's just opening, and then our properties next year, and like how those commitments just like overlay into how we're having to forecast. So right now, we're really hoping that we can just kind of, we would love growth, right? And we have had some growth, but we are still very expensive county to live in. Our utilization rate is around 93 to 94%. So it's not even like we hit 100% and that we're mismanaging because we're overutilizing and that's why we can't afford it. We're at our max and we're still like not even meeting the HUD's initial goal last year of like 98% utilization. We're like, well, that would be great. Can you please fund us? And we'd love to get to 98% utilization. So, okay. Great.
Next slide, I'll take the public housing. We wanted to really sort of introduce public housing and the vouchers because these are 2 federal funded programs. So in looking at the budget and the potential risk to the housing authority, especially for the executive orders and the magnitude of issues coming down from Washington, these were the 2 programs that would have the greatest impact on our budget, what we call uncontrollable. Whereas on the housing development, ownership management, that is our role. We can control it better in some ways. So public housing is the fund 407 and 410. So that proration, we have already heard some information, and proration, as you saw on the other slide, is the percentage that you should be getting based on the subsidy and the percentage that will be appropriated by the federal government. And we have heard that public housing operating is 95%. Grants, we haven't yet announced. We are assuming a worst case right now at 88%. It could be worse. But right now we're just making some assumptions. And how do we mitigate against that? So this is some of the numbers in terms of what our operating will show up, what our capital will show up, and what is our total expenses for both operating and capital. And because we're a move to work agency, operating and capital are fungible. And what we're showing is that we'll rarely break even at that level. And that was what we're right now, you can call it budgeting to. In the same way that Liz was talking about when she was looking at vouchers and how she's budgeting and managing that whole wait list, voucher utilization, even, what rent rates are we looking at? When we say, 100% fair market rent versus are we going to be lower, less, and how do we gauge that? Yes, Paul?
Just quick. This is the annual number.
Yes.
Does the grant come in at one time or does it come in over a series of months?
They come in over a series of months and you can't draw it all down at one time.
Thank you.
Next slide. Any other questions?
I think my job's stressful when I come here and you guys have to put up with it.
That's why we have folks like you guys help us.
So what's next? So our goal is to finalize our budget, the best draft we can to prepare by May 16 and send to you guys so you can see what we're gonna be presenting to you on May 22nd, so you can look through it, digest it, and maybe come up with some questions or suggestions. So we're gonna meet at next meeting on May 22nd. We're gonna present to you the budget that we came up with. And we're gonna be continuing working from today till May 16th. And then after we meet with you guys, we're gonna take your insights, comments, and suggestions, and we're gonna finalize. I'll share Catherine Harrington. She requested that we submit budget 2 weeks in advance before hearing. So this gonna be our goal. We set the date, May 30th, to finalize the budget and budget narrative and all budget documents and submit to the Chabad. And finally, on June 17th, our team, our executive manager is gonna present to Chabad. And this is the day where we're gonna find the budget needs to be reviewed and approved.
And last year, we even had a member of this group come co-present with us, so, you know, Chair Bell or Vice Chair Kane or other members think about whether you'd like to play a role. This is really meant to be an orientation to get you geared up for next month. So, because it's a lot of terminology, it's a lot of numbers, but we're trying to do the best we can of identifying out the sort of key assumptions and drivers of our budget. And you guys can do a gut, essentially what you're doing is a gut check for us. And you guys will vote, whether you are okay with us moving forward with presenting it.
That's important, we have a quorum.
Yes. No pressure.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, so, the last item on our agenda is for the members to share any questions or suggestions, about future discussions, but since due to time, I'm gonna ask that you email BNF with those questions or suggestions. And then, if nothing else, I'd like to go ahead and close this meeting. Have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Amen. The meeting is adjourned.
So well
Corona-
done.
Yeah, officially.